What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so this is a question that one of my subscribers asked of me to give my opinion. And I think I've done a video similar to this before, but I think it was some years ago. And my opinion really hasn't changed much. He wanted me to give my opinion on whether or not Magic Johnson was a more skilled player than Larry Bird back in the era they played in the 1980s. Um, I would say that first of all, Magic Johnson was more of a transformative player, um, being that we have never seen anybody quite like that before. A guy as tall as he was and as big as he was, because many people thought that he would struggle in the NBA because of his height. You know, most of the guards at that time were about 6'3" and under. And while you might say, well, that's a huge disadvantage for them against a guy like Magic, it is potentially on the defensive end when Magic's on that end. But on the defensive end, when the littler guys are going against Magic, the perception was that they would pick him apart because of his high dribble. But even though Magic did average somewhat a high level of turnovers, but it was offset by his ridiculous output as far as playmaking and facilitating. He averaged an NBA record 11.2 assists per game in his NBA career, most ever. So that was more than rectified as far as not really being a significant issue with Magic. I mean, there are times when he had a lot of turnovers, but it really almost never really got in the way, especially in key game situations. But yeah, we never seen a guy that big, 6'9", 220 pounds, and could handle the rock like he did. Wasn't the fastest point guard, but he was one of the best, if not the best, at getting the ball in pinpoint situations where his teammates would be most effective on the floor. Another guy that had that skill set that comes to mind is Jason Kidd, and to a slightly less extent, in my opinion, Steve Nash. I'm also say about Steve Nash. Steve Nash sometimes is a victim of circumstance because it's not that he wasn't a really, really good player. It's the fact that he didn't, most of us just, even back then when it happened, most of us just never felt like he deserved those two MVPs. And some politics was involved in that, you know what I'm saying? But because what was going on in the league at that time. But yeah, if I had to choose who was the most skilled between these two guys, I would go with Larry Bird. You just got the feeling that Bird was a more complete player than Magic, especially coming into the league. One of the things that Magic struggled with the first couple of years of his career was he didn't really have much of a jump shot. And, when you look at their overall careers, Magic definitely got better with his mid-range jump shot. And toward the last 3 or 4 years of his career, he had a dependable mid-range jump shot and even had extended his range as the three-point shot became more important. He even extended his range to the three-point line. One year he shot, even though it was a small sample size, he shot 38% from three. So he definitely got better. He came into the league, Magic Johnson, as a pretty good free throw shooter, about 75%, but ultimately through repetition and hard work, he became a great free throw shooter, elite, better than Michael Jordan. He became like a 90% free throw shooter, although he didn't shoot quite as many as Mike. Bird was always an elite free throw shooter. Bird came into the league shooting well over 80%, and by his third or fourth season, he was always pretty much around that 90% range. Magic led the league in free throw percentage one year. I think Bird led the league in free throw percentage maybe twice. But don't quote me on that one. On the defensive side of the ball, Magic was a average wing defender, in my opinion. Although he did lead the league in steals twice, right? Magic is the prime example of how steals are not necessarily an indicator of you being a great defender. Magic gambled a lot on defense. He got burnt a lot on defense at first. As his career progressed, he gambled less. He became never great on defense, but I would say slightly above average. I would say he was slightly above average until maybe the last 2 years he was a Laker. And then he became average again defensively, as I think he slowed down a little bit. But his steals went down because he was gambling less. Bird, before the back injuries, was actually a good defender. Matter of fact, I believe Bird was 3 times all defensive second team. So before the back injury, Bird was a pretty good defender, man. He just wasn't the swiftest guy out there. But he, when you got people that some old Bird to get cooked, yeah, Bird was actually a good defender, man. He was better than Magic. And for all this stuff about Bird being so unathletic, keep in mind, Magic Johnson and Bird had the same vertical leap, 28 inches, which is about average. So compared to a Dominique Wilkins or James Worthy or Scottie Pippen, you know what I'm saying? Compared to these gazelles, Larry Bird looked slower. But compared to the average athlete, they were about average. Same thing with Karl Malone. Karl Malone vertical leap was around 26 inches, I think. So, it is what it is. Bird just, to me, had the better overall package, you know what I'm saying, offensively. Bird had the mid-range jump shot. He could hit from outside. He could score in more of a variety of ways than Magic, in my opinion, especially earlier on in his career. Bird was a little bit better rebounder than Magic. Magic, of course, would have the edge with passing and playmaking, but Bird was not shabby in that aspect as well. You guys were really, really close, man. When I say close, I mean as far as their impacts on the game. Magic, I believe, holds the record for highest win percentage with a team. I believe Magic Johnson with the Lakers won 74% of their games. He was briefly surpassed by, matter of fact, it was 73% of the games. They won 73% of the games with Magic Johnson. He was briefly surpassed by that fraud whose name I won't mention in LA right now. And I'm not talking about LeBron James. I'm talking about the other fraud. That him and Steve Ballmer, those dudes. But yeah, if I had to say who was the more skilled of the two, I would go with Larry Bird, right? Clutch, leadership, just reputation, league wide. I would go with Magic. Also, shot blocking was they neither one of them were great shot blockers. About the same. Maybe a slight edge to Larry Bird. Maybe a slight edge. Also, I would argue this too. Magic had the better career overall because Bird became besieged by injuries. But I would say Larry had the greater peak. From 84 to 86, I think Larry was a greater player at his peak than Magic was from 87 to 90. This is my opinion. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I would go with the edge for Larry Bird. So what you guys think?